Hello world, Double Thumbs here. Money doesn't grow on trees, meaning value is important when making purchases. And you want to record your interesting life, but you want it in 4K. And there are lots of 4K cameras available, but I chose the Sony A6400, which I've been using for the past year. Let's talk about some pros and cons of this little camera. So the first positive for the A6400 is the 4K image quality and the unlimited recording time. The A6400 is my first 4K camera, and I'm still blown away by the quality of its 4K videos. Especially with great lenses like the Sigma f1.4 lenses, it produces an amazing image regardless of lighting situations. And yes, 4K, it may not be necessary for YouTube. 1080p is definitely enough when a lot of us just watch our YouTube videos on our phones, but 4K, if your computer can handle it, is a good way to future-proof your memories. And 4K TVs, 4K monitors are becoming more cheap. It's 2020, I assume that it'll be widely available by the end of the year. And you know you want to watch your travel videos on your big 4K TV screens. And another thing, even on a 1080p screen, the 4K videos just look better. And if you want to record long sports games or any kind of long life events, the A6400 can do that as well, because it doesn't have any recording limit, unlike the older Sony APS-C cameras, which have a 30-minute recording limit. And it does this without overheating. And the second positive for the A6400 is its quick autofocus system. And in my opinion, this is the biggest strength for the Sony APS-C cameras, because if you're filming your own life, you're not gonna have a cameraman to make sure that you're in focus. And a picture or a video out of focus, definitely not usable. So if you're a solo film crew, the A6400 and other Sony APS-C cameras autofocus system is a huge advantage over the competition. And over the last 12 months of owning this camera, I've never had issues losing focus. And the third positive of the A6400 is its low light capabilities. The A6400 has an APS-C sensor, which is smaller than sensors found in full-frame cameras like the Sony A7 Mark III and Canon EOS R. But it's actually the biggest sensor that's not full-frame, and compared to other sensors like the Micro Four Thirds sensors found in Panasonic Micro Four Thirds cameras, and 1-inch sensors like those point-and-shoot cameras, and 1/2.3 inch sensors found in smartphones and action cameras. And especially combined with bright lenses like the Sigma f1.4 lenses, it is definitely able to get very usable, very clear 4K video quality even in low light. Just look at the one that I keep showing. I love this shot. So it's definitely usable, and compared to action cams and mini cameras that have amazing 4K videos nowadays, the APS-C sensor is almost 12 times bigger. So it's just gonna have better low light videos because it's able to let more light into its sensor. Physics. And now on to the negatives of the A6400. And the biggest one, and the first one, is the competitors that are out there. And it's 2020 and there are lots of 4K cameras available, and some of them are a lot cheaper than the A6400. So the first category being the action cams and the mini cameras, so the GoPro, the DJI Osmo Action, and the Pocket, and the new Insta360 One R. These cameras are quite cheap, almost a third or at least less than half of the A6400, and they produce very good image quality, good 4K cameras that are stable, because these cameras all have good image stabilization built into them. And for most people, these guys may be the best camera. If you're only recording YouTube videos and your own life, and you don't mind a little grain on your low light or night videos, then it might work. But like I said, the sensors are so small, so the low light videos are gonna be quite grainy. And I do like my clear and sharp indoor and evening videos, because we're not always gonna be filming in daylight outdoors. Sometimes we're gonna film in darker situations, and the A64 does a great job at that. And the second one is the 1-inch sensor mini cameras, or point and shoot cameras, like the RX100 Mark VII or the 5A or the Canon G7 Mark III. And these cameras are the perfect balance between the size and image quality, because they definitely get usable or less grainy evening or low light videos. But the prices on these cameras are sometimes higher than the A6400. For example, the RX100 Mark VII is $1,300, which is $300 more than the A6400 with its kit lens. That's enough to buy you a prime lens with the difference of $300. So if you don't want to spend any more money on lenses and you wanted to keep your package as light as possible and small as possible, these may be a great option, but definitely not for me. And the third alternative are the mirrorless cameras. So there are lots of mirrorless 4K cameras available, starting with the Sony A6600, which is the older brother of the A6400, and it has in-body stabilization and a bigger battery, which is nice to have and sometimes necessary. But for $500 more than the A6400, I don't think it's the best bang for the buck camera. Because for that difference, you could buy a lens like this, the Sony 18-105 stabilized lens. And this is definitely able to produce some very stabilized, very steady videos. And I think it's a better way to do that than to buy the A6600, unless you have the money. And the second one is the A6100, which is the little brother to the A6400, without the longer recording limit and no picture profiles. And I recently started playing around with picture profiles, and it's pretty interesting. It does get better colors compared to no picture profile. But is it necessary? I don't think so. If you're just looking to record and upload and record and just keep it in your hard drive, you don't need the A6400 or the picture profile. If the A6100 can do everything else the same way as this A6400, and at $300 less in price, it's a serious alternative to the A6400. And I think that would be the bang for the buck camera if you're not into exploring into more color grading, and if you're not recording 30 plus minutes at a time. And the next alternative would be the Canon 90D or the M6 Mark III or Mark II. And these cameras I've never considered because the M6 Mark III seem to have worse autofocus and worse battery. And the 90D is about $150 more, and it's a heavy DSLR camera. Whereas the Panasonic G85 and the G9, I really did consider, just because the G85 is a lot cheaper than the A6400 and has amazing stabilization. But the only thing is that it has very bad autofocus. And the G9, which used to be a lot more expensive and has come down significantly in price in the last couple months, is definitely a serious contender for the A6400. And it does have a micro four thirds sensor, meaning it won't be as good in low light compared to the A6400, but it's got amazing stabilization and it can record in 4K 60 frames per second. So if last year the G9's price was about $1,000, to be honest, I don't know which camera I would have bought. I might have bought the G9 instead of the A6400. But it wasn't that price then, so I bought the A6400, and no regrets here. And the second negative of the A6400 is its lack of stabilization and not so good battery life. And stabilization is quite important in video, so Panasonic cameras might be a better choice if stabilization is key and you're always on the move and moving around a lot. But the A6400 does have its secret weapon, as I showed before, the 18 to 105 f4G lens. And with this lens, which has amazing lens stabilization, the lack of in-body stabilization in the A6400 isn't as big of an issue. And same with the battery life, it's only able to film for about 60 to 80 minutes. And it's definitely good enough for me, but some people who want to record for a very long time might find this is an issue. And you can plug it in and it can charge as it records, so it's not an issue either. And second batteries are pretty cheap, so it's not a problem for me. And another option to stabilize your camera would be to buy one of these things, the camera gimbals, and it will keep your camera steady and your image smooth as butter, but it will add a little bit of size to your kit and definitely not for traveling or anything like that. And the third negative of the A6400 is its price. $1,000 is not cheap, especially if you're not making any money doing videos. I don't use my cameras to make an income, so it's strictly an expenditure. And $1,000 to spend on a hobby could be a little bit difficult to justify. And especially with action cams and other smaller cameras that are much cheaper, becoming better every year, it's definitely a hard sell. But still, I think $1,000 for the A6400, it's definitely a bargain compared to other higher end cameras like the full frame cameras or real cinema video cameras. So it's definitely bang for the buck. So in conclusion, the best budget 4K camera choice depends on your budget. If saving money is the absolute priority, then you have to get the action cams or the DJI Osmo Pocket. But if you're able to spend a little bit more money and want a bigger camera that you can shoot in any situation, the Sony A6100 is a serious bargain at $599. It can do everything that the A6400 can do except for the color grading and the recording limit. And the other one, if you're able to spend a little bit more, is the Panasonic G9. It has gimbal-like stabilization and 4K 60 frames per second, which can create some very nice slow motion. But I'm happy with the A6400 because it has very good 4K image quality and the ability, if I want to do some color grading and do some long takes. And this is still all under $8,000. So I think the A6400 is still a very good budget 4K entry-level camera. But what do you think are the best budget entry-level 4K cameras? Let me know down below, and until next time,